I want to
this.
capture the gold about your dog
My
barking.
dog barks. I love my dog, and my dog loves me. My family's like, and meaning like Brearley and Heath, are like, yeah, you love Maximus more than us. And this was true about the old dog. The old dog, they're like, you love Ginger more than us. And as a dad, you know what happens. My dad said the same damn thing when I begged for a dog and finally got one after years and years and years of pining. The dad takes over, taking care of the dog.
He's the world's greatest love.
And I even find myself saying shit to the dog like my dad did as a, I in some ways, look, some of this podcast is going to be about me looking back on my own dad and how he was an awesome dad and a fucked up dad. I'm not afraid to say that. I think about the latter half being a parent myself because as an adult, it's you look at your parents in a different light. You kind of shatter the illusion of them being these kind of gods on earth at some point or whatever. But yeah, I totally say things like, "Come on, you dumb dog," and I'm like, my dad would say that. He'd just say things like he wasn't like mad angry, but I'm like, I sound like just it's not nice. And no one's 24/7 nice. And you see me, Neil. You know I put that on. And sometimes, like, I get tired of it, but I don't know how to really be mean. Like, I can only fantasize about punching someone in the face. I can't do it. My hands, I just...
Your
Anyways.
default setting, your average baseline is pretty nice. So
Yeah.
that's like you're starting at an advantage. I think mine's a little bit meaner, and I have to work against that. That is my handicap.
I'm so happy to get into this right now because something that when we first encountered each other, and I think the world should know this, right? We've known each other for a little bit of time. Some time has elapsed, but it's not like, we didn't go to college together. We didn't do semester at sea twice, if you even know what that was. You ever heard of that one?
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah, right. All right. Well, we both went to colleges, right? Reasonably expensive colleges. That's the only ones who know about semester at sea.
How much did your college cost?
Well, from 1995 to 1999, 25K a year. So it was 100K, which is hilarious because that's expensive.
I'm 8 years younger than you, 9 years younger than you, and I was my college cost I want to say 160.
Oh.
And so what do you think? And I think it's probably
Did you go to Yale? Where did you go, Neil?
Tufts. Tufts.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
that's damn. But I mean, I went to USC, which I would just say this: we're not going to get into the whole. I don't know if you grew up in the era of U.S. News World Report college rankings.
Of course, that was all I cared about, which I regret deeply. I was like, what is the highest ranked school that I can get into?
Yes.
And now I'm pushing 40, and I'm like, oh, I probably should have chosen based on like what would make me happiest. Nope.
Dude, it's total BS. My wife went to Northwestern. I went to USC. She'll always be like, oh, you went to USC. Those are for dumb kids. And then the grand scheme of things, you're like, well, what does it matter if we were theater majors and I was rolling around on the floor pretending to be a hippopotamus for $1 gazillion an hour?
You were rolling around on the floor at a very highly ranked institution.
Yeah. Let me tell you. That and a dollar.
Ollie, I'm going to keep the trains running. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell everybody what this show is and what it's called? I'm going to go on mute, so I'm going to stop talking.
All right. Well, folks, here's the thing, and I'm totally going off script here. This is Ali Khan. That's me. And this is a dad podcast. I am a dad, as is my cohort. That's what we're going to call Neil. Last time in the rehearsal, he was a producer, but he's a cohort, really, because he's a bit of a lifeline when I need him. This is a podcast about me being a dad, which isn't about being a dad, because you are a dad, but it's about understanding this experience, which is, look, I'm going to tell you something. I didn't read the book about parenting, when like we were nesting and my wife was carrying the fruit of my loins in her body. I wasn't like studying or learning or doing anything. Honestly, I was trying to go out as much as I could because I knew that once that baby came along, I'd have to stay at home forever, for a long time. And so all of a sudden, then we have the kid, and it's like, whoo, here comes this marathon. And, I'm a good human being. Like, I want to be a good human to this little human. So you try things, you figure it out. I was lucky to have a few friends in my situation, similar age in life. We were all having kind of kids together, and then you're just in it, man. And I think like, well, maybe like a lot of things in my life, and maybe like a lot of things in your life too, you can only do so much prep and planning. When you're in a job, you just ride it and do whatever you can. And the way I look at being a dad is about sharing stories while we're in the trenches. And I'm in the trenches, and I'm thankful to say I've been in the trenches for 13 years because I have a 13-year-old. And the real genesis of how cohort Neil and I came up with this is he has kids that are much younger, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. And not to be the guy who's like, oh yeah, those days on the playground, but I'm a guy who's very nostalgic and stuff. And then you realize the most amazing thing is how finite this is. It's almost it's like a microscopic, maybe not microscopic, but it's a smaller scale look at life itself. Like, this is Friday, February 7th, 2025. You only get one. Groundhog Day is a Bill Murray movie. It doesn't really happen. It's not even Groundhog Day. I think that just happened. But the point is, savor the moment. Let's all trade stories. I hope on this podcast, I hope to talk to other dads. Hopefully ones that are super famous so we can blow this pot up. So you didn't find me because you watched me on Cheap Eats back in the day. But yeah, like, I realize this, like, I've had the opportunity to have some really fun careers in my life, but there is one thing that is probably the world's greatest job I'll ever have, and that is being a dad to Heath Khan. And it's only gotten better. Like, you think like, oh, you have a baby, and in the movie it's like, I got a baby, I'm a dad now. No, I mean, there are these moments where all of a sudden it just hits you like a frickin' truck. I watched my kid finish lower school, 5th grade. In Texas, middle school starts in 7th grade, or 6th grade, I mean. And all of a sudden I'm like, wait, what? It's over? Like, I remember leaving preschool, cool. I remember leaving kindergarten, cool. But then it's like, wait, this is it? Like, I have to leave now? It's kind of not too different from when I was graduating college. And you're like, shit, already? No, kicking and screaming. So I guess in some ways, this is a dad podcast if you happen to be a man-child, and you're like, I better figure out how to be the best man-child I can be for my little child. I hope that made sense, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah, sure. I mean, who cares? If it did, great. If it didn't, we'll figure it out, just like fatherhood.
Yeah, exactly.
What's nice about this, too, is it's jogging a lot of memories for me. Granted, again, we've established I'm much younger than you.
Let's not get crazy.
39. But I remember, speaking of leaving college, I was an English major, so I wasn't rolling around on the floor pretending to be something else. I was reading books about people pretending to be other things.
That's only a degree away of more valuable than theater. Let's be honest. Both of us wish we learned code.
We're in this boat together, and I remember. Did you guys have senior week, like the final week of stuff before you're launched into the real world, the real economy?
No, unfortunately, and maybe Tufts was a smaller school. USC kind of was a shattered college experience in that, yes, there was a campus, but campus life was dead almost on the weekends because you're in LA and it was literally a huge distraction. It's
right.
Almost to a degree kind of like the NYU experience, which is like you're in college, but you're also in New York City. And for me, I was in college, but I was also in Los Angeles. So didn't get senior week. It sounds nice. Tell me more about it.
No. Well, that's funny. Yeah, no, New York City always terrified me, which is why I didn't want to go to school there. Still kind of terrifies me. I live here. I remember being in like a canoe with some guy on, I don't know, the Charles River or something, whatever our little trip was.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, "Oh, you're all graduating. What are you gonna do?" And everyone was like, "I'm an engineer. And I was like, I was an English major." He's like, "Oh, what are you gonna do with that?" And I was like, I actually have a job lined up for me. I'm a PA for Court TV. So, and 20 years later, here I am with former theater major Ali
Yeah.
Khan. And, I'd like to go find that guy from the canoe and be like, you had a point. I didn't have a ton of lined up.
Look, I'll say this, and I had these conversations my freshman year, and this will correlate right back to being a dad. What do they say? Life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. I had
I don't know
two
if they say
people.
it. I think John Lennon said something like
Oh,
that.
seriously, Lennon? Wow, you really are an English major. You
Oh,
actually
boy.
care about the quotes. But I had knew two people my freshman year, and there were others who on my dorm floor and stuff who were like, "You're gonna be a what?" And like, believe it or not, I look more like a on-camera talent person now than I did at 18. That those pictures will certainly, yeah. I mean, think super bad.
It's the glow up, the Ali Khan glow up.
Yeah, there's been some glow up over the years, but I had some people who were like, one guy was like a computer engineer major, and he was like, like computers are gonna replace actors, and I'm like, yeah, right. Now we're in a time where that's true, but guess what? Homie did not get his degree in computers. It was too hard. He ended up in marketing. There was another dude. He was my dorm room. What do you call it? Your dorm roommate? Dorm mate. He lived in my dorm
I
room.
think they just called it roommate. I don't know.
That's it. That's you're an English major. I felt nervous, but my roommate, he was like, never forget this. And my dad was a doctor too, but he wanted to be a doctor. That was his whole thing. He had the Mercury staff tattooed on the back of his shoulder. And when someone asked Ryan, "Hey, you want to be a doctor?" and he goes, "Yeah, dude. Doctors, they make all the money and they pork all the chicks." And I was like, "That's cool, Ryan. You're from Napa Valley and you talked down to me from being from the Midwest, and you said pork all the chicks." That
Okay,
guy,
I've
when I
never heard that before, by the way, of a motivation to go get your medical degree. Uh,
Long
in,
story short, senior
yeah.
year of college, he was about to apply for dental school. So, whatever, there you go. That's what this is about. This is about life. It's about the guy who's like, you know what? I have a mercury staff on my back, but I'm now a dentist. Okay, that's really
Which,
what.
very. I know they get a bad rap. I know it's very thankless work. It's very painful for the patients, but very necessary. Dental health is important. So everybody
I
out there,
know a
floss.
dentist
You
dentist
know,
at my kid's school. He drives a Porsche, so I could think of worse
and that's what
things.
it's all about.
Oh, you know what? Make all the money, pork all the chicks, drive a Porsche. You know what? I maybe it's the same guy. I don't know. All right. Should we talk about fatherhood?
Yeah. So I don't think you mentioned this, but you did remind everyone that you're a TV host once
Yeah.
upon a time, and
Yeah.
you have some fans, and you kind of put out the bat signal and asked for questions, and people asked questions. So I'm gonna just read some of those questions. So this is from a fan of yours named Carlos from Atlanta.
Carlos,
He said,
Atlanta.
"Hi Ollie, my kid wants an iPhone. Things are tight, paycheck to paycheck tight, and I don't want to burden my son with financial stress. But I also can't justify getting him an iPhone for $1,500 when a secondhand dumb phone will do the trick just to get in touch with me and his mom. So what's the best plan of attack here? Do I just give him a cheap phone and tell him to be grateful, or do I let him know that stuff costs money and the world doesn't just give you things for free? Help me out."
I mean, you kind of answered your own question with two decent solutions. One is, I'm not buying you a $1,500 phone because I don't have the money, which is honest and the truth. And ultimately, our kids see the truth way more than we think they do. And the other thing is you can just get him a cheap phone and you can always upgrade. But yeah, I mean, I have a 13-year-old. He has friends who have iPhones. He does not. He has an iPad that's wrapped up in an OtterBox. And he got an iPad because those things sunk in price. We bought it at Costco. Hopefully Costco can come on and support this pod. But, yeah, like my kid would lose it, so we're not doing it. And when he does get a phone, it's going to be my old phone. It will be my 12 Pro Max. Yep. I'm keeping it real, folks. Keeping it real. Still hanging on to this phone 4 years later. If that's how I roll, that's how my kid's gonna roll. Just to me, committing to the plan. So, yeah, I mean, trust your instincts, be real. Pay the mortgage, pay the rent, put food on the table before you buy a $1,500 phone that, my kid would lose. So there you go.
No shade in keeping the phone as long as humanly possible. I kind of think they were kind of like cars now. You pay it off and you're like, oh, well, now I don't have any car payments. So we're $3,500 away from finally owning our car. And then we're
freedom.
Gonna be like, and then, of
Who
course,
wants
it's
it?
Break,
Do you have a car? You're in New York, so you don't need one. You
well,
have a car.
I do. We have a Subaru Forester.
Whoa,
A
whoa,
2020.
Whoa.
Got it the summer of 2020 when there was a lot of cars, because I don't know if you remember, there was the pandemic.
Oh yeah, I heard about that.
There's a lot of cars. There was a lot of real estate, and then 6 months later, that was all gone. And then there weren't enough of anything, and here we are in 2025, and everything's good now.
You park it on the street there?
Yeah.
Wow.
There's street parking. It depends on your neighborhood, but
yeah. I too hold on to cars. My car is a gazillion years old. It's a 2013. But the thing is it pays. Nothing's wrong with it. I spend, including insurance, maybe $400, $500 a year on it, not including gas. I mean, why? Why? The only thing is, my kid goes to a fancy school, and it is like I have a crappier car than the teachers. If I had to be
that's
real
character
about it.
building, right? I mean, you would think that's I grew up in an affluent neighborhood where some of my classmates had BMWs, Mercedes, Volvos, although they weren't as cool back then, Acuras. I had my grandfather's Chrysler Eagle, which in beautiful gray.
I'd have to Google that. I don't have an automatic image of that model of automobile.
Yeah. And it was formative for me. I'm still talking about it, clearly.
Were your parents affluent? Like, could they have a nice car and they chose not to?
Affluent. This is a relative term, and since we're getting into class, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with the subject. It's funny. My wife and I had similar upbringings. She likes to say she was the poorest rich kid. So that was kind of my situation. We lived on the other side of the tracks, literally. There was a train in town, and I guess our property values were worth less. So yeah, I don't know, like affluent New Jersey, but then you could see more affluent. You're always looking up the ladder.
God, that's I feel like that's a big thing to me when Carlos asks that question about, oh, should I get him the phone? It's like, think you are looking up the ladder. Like, just be real. This is what you've got. This is what you can afford. Remember when you get the brand new, I think that everyone can relate to this. You get the brand new iPhone, you're like, ooh, I researched the perfect case, and I want it to be precious, and ooh, it's so shiny and new. And then 2 years in, you didn't have it in the case, it took a scratch, and it still works. The world keeps spinning, right? And there's just something about it where it's like, ugh, it's just relentless. Isn't it exhausting to think about, oh, I wish I had that nicer car, and then you can get it And then it's like, look, my wife got a new car a little under 2 years ago. Just noticed a couple, not major scratches, some scuffs, maybe some things I can buff out, but you're like, it begins. It begins. Much like my age. It's beginning. Neil, I'm aging. I just saw Jeremy Piven on a podcast, and I was like, Piven, he's aging. He doesn't have the gray like me, so I don't know how that happened.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Yeah. No, you can't. It's interesting. Like these people live in your brain at a certain image, a certain moment in time. Like you see
Yeah.
Tom Hanks, and he's a man in his 60s. He just is. And that's why they had to de-age him for the new Robert Zemeckis movie. I guess not new anymore, but the latest Robert Zemeckis movie where he reunited with Robin Wright, formerly
Yeah.
Robin Wright. And they de-age him, and he looks like younger than he did in Big, you know? But you can't escape time. Time is real, which is why we're doing this. We operate in space and time.
We went from phone to car to Tom Hanks. We're really going all over the map
It always
today.
comes back to Hanks. But, yeah, you have more fans than just Carlos. What if I have another question from Carlos? There's another one from Carlos.
That's how my fan base works. There's like 6, and they're like, yeah! I mean, they're like, I did a TV show for 5 seasons, and I basically got 6 more best friends for life that go back to college.
It's like one fan per season, and then in one of the seasons you got 2.
Yeah, and then the other thing too is I think I probably lose one in reruns, but then gain another. But then when you gain the other in reruns, the fans kind of like, I'm like, what year do you think we're in? Because they'll be like, oh yeah, you went here today. And I'm like, that was 7 years ago, which is a whole other
That's
thing.
amazing. They saw it on Cooking Channel, Food Network, and then they ran into you, or they met you.
Oh no, this is all DMs. This is all these are my kinds of DMs. My DMs are like, oh, you look like you had a lovely time in Boulder, and I'm like, that was literally just over 9 years ago, But hey, I'm grateful.
Really
I'm grateful.
What's the sweetest DM you've ever received about a lunch you've had?
I mean, there is probably someone who's listening to this podcast, every word of it right now, and she is probably my biggest fan. Constantly, like, has jumped into all the new stuff. Like, one of the big things is like, okay, you have this show, and then you're like, oh yeah, here's something else I'm doing. Will you check it out? And there's just a huge fall off because people are committed to the platform they're already on, but this person is 24/7 there. So, it's just, it's not really one specific comment. It's just always been, I can bank. I would put money, Neil. I'll put money, Neil, that I have a barbecue video series I was doing, and I'm one more video in the queue. Guarantee you will see this person's comments on the YouTube platform. And this is someone who would typically just be engaging with me on like Instagram, but like she's across the board. She's across the board. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. That's crazy.
Do we want to give a shout out? Or do we want to keep it
shout out to Maddie Sadler. Maddie. Yeah, like you can pin her profile. You'll see her all over my feed. For years. Yeah. So there you go.
All right, this one's for you, Maddie. We do have another fan question. This one's from another college town, Madison, Wisconsin. Aaron from Madison.
Aaron.
Right.
Okay.
Yo, Ollie. A bunch of my friends from college and I have been doing vacations together, just the guys, for like the past 17 years. After the pandemic, we missed a few summers, but then got back on track renting beach houses. Now usually everybody's family comes. We're the only ones without kids yet, and we're still invited, but it's getting a little bit awkward. My wife doesn't really get along with the other wives, and they're a little judgmental. It seems sometimes that we don't have kids. I've tried talking to some of the guys about it, but none of us really want any drama. It's honestly kind of awkward. I'd love to get back to just guys trips, but it doesn't seem like that's really an option either. So, Besides getting stupidly drunk and high to deal with the tension this summer, what can I do to make this smoother sailing and not have to miss out on these trips?
Well, I never thought I'd ever be in a position to advise someone to not get drunk and high. But I think we know one thing about this podcast and being a dad is understanding that we have some degree of responsibility. You aren't a dad, but you're surrounded by fellow friends, good pals who are dads. And, you know what? This is important advice for those who aren't dads who are around other dads is like, don't be scummy around their kids. Like there'll be plenty of time for everyone's kids to go, oh, is this what you were like back in the day? You know what I mean? I would think I was watching some Nikki Glazer special and she's like looking at a picture of her grandfather like, ooh, who's this handsome guy? That's the past. And, the appropriate move is to kind of like, share what is going to improve their lives and not get into every nitty gritty detail, right? But look, I will tell you, I've been in a very similar situation. We were doing a little vacation-y trip, and I pulled my wife because here's the thing: it's your friends, guy from Madison. What's his name again? Aaron? Is it Aaron? Okay, Aaron. It's your friends, not your wife's friends. So it's already kind of an ask, right? You're like, hey, you're we've all been there. We're married or whatever. You have a partner. You're already asking her to come to your world, a bit. And I've literally been in this similar situation, and everything moves at a different speed, especially when those kids are young. And I would really kind of take a pause and go, is this the real best fit? For hanging out, and it's totally fine. And I think your friends have to understand too, look, I mean, if your wife was best friends with all the other wives that had kids, then it just probably wouldn't be an issue. But you got to recognize, when you have a partner and you're asking them to come to something that's more 60%, 70%, 80% you than them, you got to expect, how much they are willing to do and give. And you got to buy a plane ticket. You said a beach. You're in Wisconsin. You're spending money. It's time. Airports. Maybe there's Ubers involved. They're like, hey, we're supposed to go all in on this. Also, it's like group. It's group. That's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure. I'm kind of with your wife on this one. Like maybe take a pause. Maybe when the kids get older. But if these are your friends for a long time, you should be able to figure out how you could kind of hang, or, maybe you just dip in for a day or two. But yeah, sometimes you just got to recognize that, the fit ain't working, and yeah, don't get bombed. Don't get bombed through the week. That is no way to make anyone happy.
So what are your thoughts on the dip in? Do they have to pay for the whole week then? I mean, I get, how's this, again, the class consciousness, very front of mind.
Here's the big thing. If it's even an issue, don't stay at the house. Stay somewhere else. We're in the era of Airbnb. You just gotta dip in, dip out. In fact, when I think about this Palm Springs trip that I went to back in the day, I bet. Wait, did we stay with them? Oh, we didn't even stay with them. My wife was already like, no, I'm not going to spend a week here. Like that was already a thing. So we are, absolutely. Like, the easiest thing in the world is just to kind of, separate yourself and just go, hey, I can pop in, this is what I can do, because I just, when you deal with the group, you're all in. I mean, no one wants to be the guy who wants to be Mr. Pink at the table, Reservoir Dogs, who tells the whole story about why he doesn't tip, only to have Lawrence Tierney. What was his name in Reservoir Dogs?
I've never seen Reservoir Dogs.
You are insane. Have you seen? Do you like Quentin Tarantino movies?
Some of them. I'm making a note. I'm going to see. This is one of your recommendations.
I mean, I don't. I mean, look, I was in high school and college through the '90s, right? Which was the era of independent cinema post Spielberg, after we'd experienced a Spielberg blockbuster. So Reservoir Dogs, like, first of all, I watched that sucker on VHS. I didn't know it was. I didn't know about it. No one knew about it, and this was kind of like finding indie rock. You're like, whoa, you got to know somebody. You got to know somebody who knows. World was a very different place pre-internet. You know, when you wanted to find the cool shit, you needed to find a cool person to hook you up.
The poster is a bunch of guys with sunglasses on and maybe
Like Ray-Bans,
cigarettes.
black suit, you know, like kind of like almost like a ska musician would wear black suit, skinny black tie.
Right.
I don't know what that was reference or significant. I'm sure because Quentin Tarantino is always like, yeah, I watched this movie. It's a Korean bank robbery movie, and he just he just watched so many movies, and it was like brilliant because it was much like probably people who start up YouTube and become gazillionaires. He like was working at a video store in Eagle Rock and like put that movie together himself. It was a real him, Robert Rodriguez. These were like these kind of pioneers of like, I don't need a studio. I'm just gonna make it myself or whatever. And the rest is history. But yeah, no, Reservoir Dogs, there's a very famous scene. Steve Buscemi. The movie starts and the camera's just moving in a circle around these dudes all sitting around finishing up breakfast at a diner. And the check comes, and he goes, all right, everybody kick in for the lady. And they get to Steve Buscemi, and he goes, nuh-uh, I don't tip. And they're like, what? And then, like, they get in this whole... It was probably so iconic because this was like Tarantino getting into his interesting conversations inserted in a genre no one would ever think of. You know what I mean? And it was a very dialogue-heavy kind of, quote, action thriller because he couldn't afford action scenes, so he had to get by with dialogue and great acting, with tension. Damn, it's turning into a movie podcast. Anyways,
Yeah,
you should watch it.
I'm gonna steer us back,
I steered us back. Neil, come on, man. Come on, dude. Look at me.
I'm sorry.
I'm a mess.
Well, listen, Mark, you know Mark from Boulder, right? One of your other 6 fans. He wants to know. Hi, Ollie. Major
Hey, Mark.
super fan of Cheap Eats here. Been following you for a while. Love what you're doing with the Dadosphere. He didn't say that. I said that. So,
Classic.
but he wants to know what's the ultimate dad meal. And he said you can choose more than one since I know that's a really hard question.
I've gotten this question before as a dad. They're like, what do you want for Father's Day? Or, it's Father's Day. What are you having? The answer is steak. And I realized something, too. Because of Matthew McConaughey being on the Burt Kreischer, I think he was in the Two Bears podcast, Two Bears in a Cave. So Tom Segura and Burt Kreischer, he was on there, and this kind of went viral, definitely in my little internet universe. But they have Matthew McConaughey on, and he talks about food. The clip that's gone is about 2 things. One is this tuna salad thing. The other thing is about steak. And he literally just says, well, ribeye is a steak. I mean, I love my elk medallions, but ribeye... And then he just talks about how he makes his perfect ribeye or whatever. But I think as a dad, maybe I'm pulling into a male stereotype, but whatever. I'm a guy. Am I offending myself? I'm sorry if I'm offending you, but I'm not offending myself. Dude, man loves steak. Man loves steak. That to me is the meal. Steak is awesome. Why is it awesome? I mean, we're freaking cavemen, essentially. We survived and evolved by eating the meat. Woolly mammoth is steak. It's red meat. And, I think about twofold. One is I love making steak, and I love the idea of someone taking me out to a steakhouse. Being the guy who advocated Cheap Eats, of course I'll tell you steakhouses are kind of ripoffs, but I will say this, as someone who's become very passionate and consumed about making my steak at home better, I do appreciate what a steakhouse does. Simply because you're not going to get steaks of that level easily. You have to go out of your way to find high quality beef, especially in this day and age where groceries are so expensive. But yeah, steak's the meal. That's a dad meal. To me, it's like, because I love making it, I love eating it, and I love going out for it, especially if someone else is paying for me. So there you go. Damn, I could eat a steak right now. Sounds delicious.
Well, thanks for that, Ollie. I'm sure that who asked that question? He's going to be thrilled.
Boulder. Was it Mark from Boulder?
Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mark. Hey, you wanna answer a question for a fan from Utah? His name is Felix, apparently.
I don't have no's not an option with you, Neil. So let it rip, let it roll.
Hey, I want to make sure you're comfortable here. But anyway, Felix from Utah.
Let me hear the question
said,
first.
Ollie, I was an athlete my whole life: varsity soccer, swimming, and track. I continued running all through my 20s and 30s, and then I got a slipped disc, and it was too painful. So I started meditating and doing yoga, but it was too slow, so I got into cycling. But I'm finding that even with cycling, I just can't get in a groove the way I used to. How should I be coping with my aging body? I guess I'm officially middle-aged, and my body doesn't recover the way it used to, but what can I do to stave that off as long as possible? Surely you, Ali Khan, must have all the answers to this.
Yeah, no, I love this. What I love about this is just really ask me anything, because like a dad, we must have answers to every possible question in the universe. That's not to deride you, my friend. I'm with you. Being a dad is also understanding that sometimes things hurt. I'm someone who actually found a really good healthy stride. I found a combo, a formula a couple years ago. And I know my own son, he'll look at an old Cheap Eats episode, which only happened once because like he'd rather watch YouTube. But he looked at an old episode of me and he goes, "Oh my God, your face, you look like a baby." So, it is about finding the right combination and balance. We all have to deal with aging, and you want to age without pain. Being someone who watched my dad, he wasn't the most unhealthy person at all, but I watched him age and eventually pass, and you're like, yeah, it's not easy. You just got to keep trying and seeing whatever works. And this might be a great opportunity to plug a potential guest on our podcast, Bobby Maximus, who is I guess I call him a fitness influencer. The guy is ripped. He is a couple years younger than me, older than you, Neil. And swear to God, there was an Instagram post of him back in the day where he painted himself green and he looked like the Incredible Hulk. That guy could tell you all day what you can do. And, you don't have to just go bonkers with workouts. I always see this all the time, too. People are like, "Oh, what up, fam? Yeah, you don't have to do all this crazy exercise." Because let's face it, we all kind of have this moment where we're like, "Oh, I need to go work out." And then you're super sore the next day. And it's like, well, you got to ease into it. And I think, too, as we get older, it is about exploring and finding other stuff. I know the feeling of the endorphin rush. I think that's what you miss when you're doing yoga. My wife went through a very similar thing. She actually had a hip replacement, which is crazy because she's just 52 years old and she's she used to run marathons and stuff. Maybe that was a correlation. But, I think, getting on a good program and, check out Bobby Maximus. I think there's a lot of information and stuff out there. And, it gets me thinking about stuff. Neil, let's get on the phone. Let's talk to some older fitness people because I think that's legitimately important. Because I'll tell you, a couple years ago, my kid completely outbested me. There's a time where you're like, I'm physically... Neil, how old's your Zeke, right?
Yeah, Zeke's 4 and
Okay.
7, yeah.
So right now, you can outrun him. You know what I mean? You can outrun him. Your daughter's 7?
Yeah.
Okay, in 2 years, she's going to beat you. she's gonna beat you. Like
I mean, they
my,
beat me now, but I'm not trying. I should say, like, they'll run ahead, and I'm like, all right, as long as
let
they
me tell you
stop.
something.
Great.
Let me tell you a little story about trying. We were at a well, first of all, this is already spells disaster. We were tailgating at a game, and me and my son are there, and he just was like, he's like, sprint me, Dad. Let's sprint. This is like 2021. This is like freaking almost a little over 4 years ago, right? And there was some guy there who had a few, and then he goes, "Wow, that kid's pretty fast." He goes, "I bet I could beat him." So the three of us go into his hardcore sprint, like a grown man. My son, who's 4 minus 13, he's 9. Yeah, he like basically was the guy was trying real hard. I balls to the wall. I went balls to the wall. Then I was like, all right, I can't do this. I'm not gonna win. And then he was beating my kid, but then he fell. And then he completely jacked his shoulder. He's screaming. I was like, okay, this is shady. This is just a whole shady situation. This guy's drunk, whatever. The next day, I was like, damn, my knee hurts. Like, I didn't hurt it, but it hurts. And like, not like, oh, I'm sore. I'm like, this is not going away. I went to the doctor and they were like, yeah, so I'm actually worried about both your knees. You have significant cartilage loss. And I was like, oh my God, what does this mean? Like, what can I do? And I had to start to explore new options, less impact. And the funny thing is, guess what? I ended up losing weight and doing a lot of stuff. But, you got to listen to the body and you got to keep adapting. So there you go. We're going to get Bobby Maximus on the phone. I love this. We talked about Reservoir Dogs and health.
I'm DMing him as we speak.
I love it. Oh, really? That's great.
No,
that's
no,
actually.
But I will.
Crap.
I'll do it after the show.
He's awesome. Bobby's a man.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Bobby Maximus. Teaching me a lot, old man. Let's
That's the whole
hey,
point.
listen. We I think you're probably gonna be surprised, but we have to take a break for sponsors. So hang on.
Oh.
I'm gonna play one of our commercials. This is from Little Line Sportsbook, brought to you. Ready?
Parents, you love your kids. You support their dreams. You sit through their game for hours in the freezing cold or in a gym that smells like feet. But let's be honest. Watching 9-year-olds fumble through soccer or enduring a scoreless T-ball season is just brutal. That's why we created Little Line Sportsbook, the only betting platform for youth sports. Now, every missed layup, every pop-up that should have been an easy out, every painfully slow dribble down the field actually matters. Because your money's on the line.
Come on, Dylan. You're costing Daddy real money out there.
With Little Line Sportsbook, you can place real bets on your child's athletic performance. Will your kid finally score a goal? Will the coach's son keep getting all the playing time? Will Timmy strike out again? Place your bets and feel the thrill of every play like your 401k depends on it.
Come on, ref. I've got $5,000 on this game.
No more doom scrolling in the bleachers. With Little Line Sportsbook, you're locked in, and your kids will know you're really paying attention because you're screaming at the top of your lungs.
Let's go! Daddy needs to cover the spread.
Little Line Sportsbook, because parenting should be more exciting.
Little Line Sportsbook is not responsible for angry spouses, league bans, or increased blood pressure. Please bet responsibly. Youth referees are volunteers. If you threaten one, you may be subject to legal prosecution. But this is America, so probably not.
Oh.
Well, thankful for Little Line. And I've been there. I've been at that event. I've been busted by my son for doom scrolling. I felt so guilty, and I realized if I had just bet money on that basketball game, even just basic stuff like, will he make the free throws? And I'd probably bet against it because I want to make the money, which would be weird because then I would cheer. Anyways, I say try it out. You know what? He's playing soccer now and he plays defense and he does a really good job at that. So, oh yeah, that would just be added incentive. Actually, I could make money off this. That's a good sponsor. I'm glad we got them on board, Neil.
It's kind of where, we're at the bottom of the barrel, so kids gambling is where we're at. But
they're not gambling. We're gambling on kids. I mean,
that's right. That's right.
That's a step up from cockfighting, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever bet on cocks fighting?
No, the closest I got to was attending bullfighting in Mexico, and I was like, forget it. And then I was like, let's just go get tacos instead.
I went to a bullfight.
You did?
Well,
oh my God,
in Spain,
were you
in Spain.
Really?
Yeah, name drop. I've been to Spain. I've been to a bullfight. I've been to a boxing match. My wife and I thought we once upon a time had season tickets to the Nets, which is a whole other story. We'll talk about another time. And they were like, "Oh, come to the Barclays Center, come see a boxing match." We said, "Okay, sure."
Yeah.
Whoa, it's pretty violent, and I guess you should know that. But it was a lot to watch, especially like some of the less famous people. There's less of the glitz, and they're just getting very hurt and very badly, and it's very bloody. And so I think we stayed for about a half hour and then left.
Oh yeah, well, don't go to MMA because if you think boxing is bad, yeah, that stuff is. I will tell you, I went to, God, I guess it was, what was it always called, MMA? This is a long time ago. This is like 2004. We went to Vegas, dude. There are fights at the thing. We're at Caesars, like we're at a, this wasn't just some dump, Neil. Like we went to Caesars. And yeah, my wife, oddly enough, loves this stuff. Like some of our Saturday nights were like, let's watch MMA. In fact, I could bring it up tonight and she'd be like, yeah, that sounds cool. She'll totally do it. And then we actually attended it live. Her idea. I got a lot of points from my friends when I was like, because at the time we were dating, we were not married yet. And I was like, oh yeah, Brearley wants to go to MMA. She got tickets. And my boy Mozzie's like, oh, hell yeah. Like, so really cool stuff. And so it was totally her idea. She fronted the dough, made the plans, organized it. We go. And she was like, this is a little much. Like, it's the crowd, the intensity. Their fights broke out. Like, I mean, it was massive. And all of a sudden you're like, why is everyone looking in the stands? It's because people are brawling. But I will say this, Neil. I think it's interesting how you rank these things from bullfight, which is watching an animal slowly be slaughtered, in my opinion. And at least in my imagination, it just seems so brutal and cruel. And then a boxing fight, which, has rules to prevent serious permanent injury, certainly death. And then just having basketball season tickets, like a true English major. I feel like you almost live up to the stereotype of like, oh, sports. I'd rather be at home reading.
You're not wrong. Never again did I get season tickets.
Oh my God, amazing.
We're there for the food. Hey, we're going to pivot to some news. Part of being a dad is being up with current events, and you did mention Groundhog Day. We are in February 2025. Hey, Ollie, this is from Yahoo News, Delilah Gray. So apparently, Punxsutawney Phil is a dad, and he's this is the first time since 1886 where the first Groundhog Day where Punxsutawney Phil is a father. I'm going to share with you that he and his wife Phyllis welcomed to two baby groundhogs.
You're talking about groundhogs, right? This is actually groundhogs.
Phil the groundhog.
And they actually have names? This isn't just
Phil.
bullshit? Really?
Phil, and Phyllis. Remember Phil, like the groundhog. Phil, like the movie. Anyway, he and Phil and Phyllis welcomed two baby groundhogs back in March 2024. They were married at the Groundhog Zoo in Punxsutawney, and their babies are named Sunny and Shadow. And also part of the news story, I guess many are wondering if Sunny and Shadow will take over his duties and be Nepo groundhog babies when Phil passes away, and the organization can confirm that his children will not be replacements. It is still going to be Phil's job to determine whether or not he sees his shadow. Should also state, Punxsutawney Phil predicted that we'd have 6 more weeks of winter this year, since he did see his shadow. And also important to note that Punxsutawney Phil is only accurate around 35% of the time, according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. So that's just your dad news. I just want to get kind of your gut reaction on that. Ollie.
My gut reaction, first of all, is A, who's looking at Yahoo News? Neil is. I think you're the only person. I mean, I have not loaded up the Yahoo homepage in decades. And yes, I'm old, but come on, so's Yahoo. Yeah, I guess groundhogs are dads too. yeah, I just, I guess what I find really perplexing is like, I don't actually think of Groundhog Day as meaning anything to me because I left Seasons in 1995. I grew up in the Midwest. That was the last winter I ever had. So I'm like, oh yeah, Groundhog Day, 6 more weeks of winter. I mean, it's already going to be 80 here. It's February. It's going to be freaking 80 today. Yeah, like, I guess, there's something about little mammals, at least with mammals, having children that should inspire us to be like, oh, look at what we are. Look at what we are. We're caring. Like that's what a fatherhood is about, is essentially seeing us inside some fuzzy little adorable creature that seems like something you'd pet, but you don't want to get too close because you might get rabies if it bites you. So that's my big take there. If you have more news, I'll tell you when you said news. When you said news,
Yahoo News.
I mean, you had to really flip through some of the pages in there. You did a lot of scrolling. You did a lot of scrolling.
Hey, what would you say to if Phil from Punxsutawney, his college friends don't like his groundhog wife, but he still wants to hang out with them on the weekends? What would you?
I mean, I would say at the very least, he should find an Airbnb that accepts groundhogs when he decides to do that trip solo. That's all I can really say to Punxsutawney Phil. Groundhogs. Yeah. My dog almost killed a squirrel the other day. How about that? That's a thing. My dog, very friendly dog, has killed 2 possums. That's being a dad. You know what being a dad is? You're the one who has to dispose of dead animals. That's my job. That is my job.
That's fair. I will say in my personal experience, my wife is a lot more handy than myself. I tend to just use the wallet to hire someone to do things, but she fix things and build things. But one thing she won't do is pick up a dead bug or a dead mouse. Which I've had to do. We do live in New York City. And it's I gotta tell you, have you had that experience of, you see a mouse in your place, and of course you get the mouse traps, you get the sticky traps, and then you're waiting, and then you hear like squeaking, and then you see this little mouse just fighting for its life on this sticky thing, and you grab a paper towel, and then you put it in a bag. I don't know. It's really, I mean, talk about existential, and then you're thinking, I'm a murderer. But what's the alternative? Live with mice as if we're in a Disney film? We're not. This is not. You are not paying rent to be here, mouse.
I mean, I think with you buy those mouse traps and you think like, oh, this will just solve the problem. What you're doing is like medieval mutilation. It's like how they killed Mel Gibson in Braveheart. The body is stuck. We had this in college, and we had the sticky one, and it was just that scarred in my brain. And then the mouse trap. I mean, it's a piece of metal. Can you imagine a piece of metal like a bar, like that dumbbell bar, whatever, that you use in weightlifting, and that thing is recoiled and then just smashes down on your midsection, and like you're crushed, but you're not instantly dead. I mean, it's not easy. I do handle the bugs, and we have a lot in common here, Neil, because my wife owns the tool sets. She does that. She will build things, and look, I mean, we've got some holes in the wall that show that she's not she wouldn't be on HGTV anytime soon if that floats your boat. Neil worked TV executive here. He knows about talent when it comes to drywall or cake decorating. Yeah, remember that one?
Remember TV?
Oh God, that's why we're here. We're here because you went here. We were happy in the other party. Really was. It was a lot easier. But you know what? It's a lot easier to be an at-home dad doing this kind of stuff. That's been a big thing for me too.
Yeah.
I
Well, I wanted to let you know, Ollie, my return to office policy is actually pretty aggressive, and I'm going to need you to fly out here
Oh, really?
daily.
Is this Doge? Is this
Yeah.
the Doge thing? I can't believe it. Guys, Doge has affected our podcast. I didn't realize I was a federal employee. But you know what? I'm just going with the flow. I can only do so much. I can only do...
Oh, is that what that is? I thought it was doggy.
Oh, I don't know. I don't
No?
know. You know what? Someone told me this. I'm well read, but not well spoken. I think I'm just not sharp on anything.
You're well. You're well.
Oh, I'm okay.
Hey, Ollie, we should let everybody go. Especially Sadie. Who did we shout out before?
Oh, Maddie Sadler. Maddie
Maddie.
Sadler. Shout out to Maddie.
Yeah. Maddie, we're gonna let you go. But before we do, Ollie, I warned you. I'm gonna always ask you, what are you watching? What are you reading? What are you listening to? Because you're just so wise, and I need to learn from you.
God, I it's funny that last week I've said to myself I'm not going to watch stuff. The time where I watch things is basically in bed, right? Everything else is done. I have no guilt for just like sitting around and wasting time, which is what happens when you're in a situation like I'm in, trying to create an empire on your own, all by my lonesome. A media empire all by my lonesome, except Neil's here too. And I was doom scrolling last night, which is such a waste of everyone's time. I will say this, though. I did last weekend binge watched Perfect Couple on Netflix. It's my wife's show. We were actually watching another show, and it wasn't very good. And so we switched to Perfect Couple. And I knocked
You
the thing out.
want to mention that show, or I can believe it.
Yeah, I do want to mention it. Well, I got to give it more of a shot because it just turned into a direction I didn't think it would. But I'm bringing this up. So, Perfect Couple, like, it was fun. It was fun. And the other recent season I finished season 1 of Fargo, which was the best show I've ever seen on FX by a mile. Great show. But the show I gave up on, but I haven't given up on the lead in it, is the new show on Hulu called Paradise. I almost had to Google it, but it came into my mind. It's a new series. Sterling K. Brown's in it. And one of my little claims to fame is Sterling and I went to school together. We've known each other for a long time. We did plays and stuff together. We both, in our own way, when he was winning an Emmy for The People versus O.J. Simpson, I was on the road doing season 2 of Cheap Eats. And in my own little way, when I watched him watch the Emmy, and I kind of looked at myself going, wow, if you want something in life, it can happen. Even if it seems like this would never happen in a million years. So I'm very invested in Sterling's success because it fuels it fuels my own because, when you know someone from before, and he's always been working. He's a talented guy. Anyways, watch Paradise. Did no idea, spoiler alert, that it goes sci-fi. I was like, wait, what? Huh? I didn't see that coming. So, but
It's not like This Is Us at all.
well, what's funny is horrible to say on this pod because I love Sterling, but I inhaled People versus O.J. Simpson. I've seen the Predator movie. I have never seen This Is Us.
Well, this is why there's two of us, because I have seen every frame of This Is Us.
I love
it. Many times. My wife will often say, "You cry at the end of television shows, but you didn't cry when our children were born." And I was happy. Did my children create some sort of gifted narrative arc that all dovetailed together at the end of the hour? They did not. They did not.
No, you're
of course I've gotten to know them over years. But no, Dan Fogelman, Fogey. He did it. He really pulls at my heartstrings.
So you're saying I should watch? It's just such a long.
Oh no,
I
no,
mean,
no, you shouldn't watch it. No, well, and that's my thing is, my thing that I say is that TV is the new books. Because when you used to be at a party and someone say, "Oh yeah, I read this book, you should read it," blah blah blah,
Yeah.
and you go, "Oh cool, okay," and in your head you're going, "I'm never going to read this book." Someone
Right.
tells you about a TV show. Ollie, do you think I'm ever going to go watch Fargo season 1? Probably not. No, but
Yeah.
I'll be aware of it. So I
Mhm.
can, oh, I've heard of that. Like a book. There's too many shows, too many books.
There are
But
too many
speaking
shows.
of books, which requires reading, what are you reading? You reading anything?
Oh my god, absolutely not. I am not a reader. What do I read? You know what? This is crazy, but I gotta have an answer. What can I do? Just stay silent? This
You
is a
could say nothing.
podcast.
You also, by the way, reading, as I've learned from my daughter, you could read stop signs. You could read nutrition facts on boxes. Reading, it opens up your world.
Oh,
You
that's
don't
right.
just have to read full books.
Okay, well, I will say this because obviously I have this whole food thing, right? I have a friend of mine who's a food writer. He is one of the regular writers for The Takeout, which is a good food website. It was better when I was on it, but then they had budget cuts. But more importantly, Substack. I've recently discovered the power of Substack, and he has a newsletter called Food is Stupid. It's basically a food comedy newsletter. He's hilarious. He says insane stuff. He says insane shit on social media. Like, I just love it. He'll be like, "Oh yeah, I'd love to try the new McRib. And after I'm done with it, I'm going to buy another McRib and shove it up my ass." Like, he'll just say these things, and you're just like, and it just shatters the typical food writer narrative. But he does
Like McDonald's is like, oh, we should do a integration with this guy. Oh, never mind.
Bingo,
Like they do
exactly.
the whole thing. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the point. You know what I mean? Is that everyone else is like, "Oh God, I hope I could, influence my wedding." And he'll be like, "This was like diarrhea." Like he'll just go for it. And he'll do stupid stuff like, making sushi with Monster Energy drink and just insane things. But like he's committed to it and he does understand food. He also does another one that's just about stuff in Chicago. Dennis Lee is his name. He's on Substack. So I always get those emails. Those are really fun. And then, I will say this. I'm going to be doing a lot of cooking videos because I'm doing a bunch of stuff on YouTube. So it's a great excuse to like take advantage of all the cookbooks I get. Usually people send you the cookbooks that you don't necessarily use, but I got one as a gift for Christmas. One of the best Thai restaurants I think in America is in Philadelphia, and I have a cookbook from the chef there. She won a James Beard a couple years ago. Her restaurant's called Kalia, and I do like to breeze through certain cookbooks. Honestly, are better to read than to actually use for practical purposes. But it is that's so. Look, you ask me what I'm reading. I'm into like Chef Knock telling me, just eat it. It's supposed to be this spicy, and then whatever. So yeah, I'm reading stuff about really really spicy beef salad. Freaking salivating right now, Neil. Hungry, Yeah.
Why don't you go get some lunch? I think we're gonna leave it there.
Okay, it sounds good. That's good. Let's do lunch.
All right. Bye, Maddie.
Bye, Maddie.